Namaste. This is my fourth video on relationships. In this little series, I'm actually, to be honest, I'm kind of hoping to end it here because I don't really have a whole lot more to discuss about these things. In the last video, I was pretty much ending it with the whole idea, with the topic of how everything basically is becoming online, and how a lot of the issues, I think, has a lot to do with society and also technology. Not that technology is really to blame, but if you really just take a look at people's lives in today's society, I think that has a lot to do with how very secluded people have become, in terms of basically staring at screens all day long, being on the internet, really, and we've sort of all become very secluded, but yet at the same time, when we do have free time, it's been kind of something that I've noticed a lot, that people, again, it's like free time, okay, hang out with friends. Everything is a party, everything is about friends and spending as much time with them as humanly possible, and a lot of people have this, a lot of people also have this view of, if you don't accept my friends, you don't accept me. Again, I think it's one of those things where it's a little bit ridiculous, and I don't think that's a very logical way of looking at it, because you're not getting into a relationship with that other person. That's sort of like an attachment, you know. It's kind of like, if that's, you know, an extra, and I'm not saying that their friends are necessarily bad people or evil people or anything not like that, but symbolically, that's kind of just another ball and chain that you don't need. You're not getting into a relationship with their friends. And also, I think it's also with that mentality, some people go to the extreme of basically having their friends give them their input and sort of listen to what their friends actually have to say about this other person. As an example, you know, a girl's dating this guy, and you know, she's the type of person who constantly, every free chance that she gets, she has to be hanging out with her friends, and she has, you know, her close little circle and what have you. And if her friends are basically an important part of her life, I think unfortunately what kind of happens sometimes is that these people, she will basically get her friends' input, and some people go to the extreme of letting that be the deciding factor. You know, her friends don't like this guy because he's this and that, and they make judgments off of him and everything. This doesn't really actually happen to me, but this is just something that I've kind of noticed, and, you know, I heard other people complain about. So that's actually just kind of one of the issues, because I want to say, you know, positive things about relationships, and I think that I have. You know, at the same time, there's also the negative, and you can't really ignore that. You have to, you know, accept that. So in terms of accepting, what I want to kind of go back to before was, if you end up with someone and you stay together for a very long time, and you end up breaking up with them, that has nothing to do with the way that they have actually treated you, but just in terms of some things that annoy you about that person, I think that's unrealistic, and I don't think that's very fair. In Buddhism, we practice certain things, and one of the and really part of the practice is having loving compassion and all that kind of thing. When you realize that you know, you have to realize that the other person is going to have, you know, little things and about them that's going to annoy you, and likewise you're going to annoy them as well. And so that's just being realistic. I mean, that doesn't really even have to do with Buddhism, but because people break up over very small, insignificant things, I think that people really need to kind of take a look at their own actions, and really, you know, first of all, you have to answer the question: do I really, am I really ready to be in a relationship? If you are on the internet because your work doesn't allow you to have any time at all, and your schedule is so hectic, and the free time that you actually do have, you're busy anyway, and then you want to basically spend the time with your friends. I think that it's a little unfair to the other person that you might be interested in, because if you don't have time, you just might not have time to be in a relationship. I mean, and the other thing too is that there's sort of this mentality of this a very casual kind of relationship, that, you know, we go on trips and blah blah blah, and we hang out whenever we hang out, and you know, the end. No, there's nothing in today's world. There's not really much seriousness to anything anymore. And like I said in the other video, I think that traditional outlooks on these things is kind of gone out the window. Personally, like I said, I don't really believe in soulmates or anything like that. It either works out or it doesn't, but there are factors that you have to do in order to make it work. You have to have that compromise, and it's illogical to break up with someone for things that they have been doing for years if it's not harming you. And this is something that I was trying to get at a minute ago, which is, from a Buddhist point of view, what we practice is this loving compassion and all of that, and the things that we do practice in Buddhism. And basically, if you are, if you're in a relationship and you know that these certain things are agitating you and stuff like that, and you kind of take a look at, well, I've been with this person, and it's not really fair, if, you know, for certain things, just to leave them for insignificant little things. The way that I look at it is really, if you're not, if the other person is not going out of their way to harm you, just kind of think about this. And if they're not cheating on you, if they're not physically abusing you, if they're not mentally abusing you, if they're not, taking, if they're not an alcoholic and they're not doing drugs and they're not stealing from you and they're not doing all these other things, these are kind of the precepts that we take in Buddhism: not to kill, not to steal, not to lie if they're not lying to you, not to commit sexual misconduct and all that, which would be cheating and other things that are unwholesome in terms of that subject. These are some things that I think are reason to kind of question, should I be in this relationship or not? If you break up with someone because they smoke, or because they, I don't know, something as stupid as, you're tired of them, I don't know, chewing off their toenails in the middle of the night and spitting them across the room, or, leaving their dirty laundry on the floor, or something like that, and this person has been doing that for years anyway, and then all of a sudden, after, a significant amount of time, you decide, well, this stuff is ridiculous, I can't be with you anymore. Why don't you take a look at the way that they're actually treating you instead? There has to be compromise. So as an example for the smoking thing, with loving speech, and this is also extremely crucial to relationships working out, you have to have loving speech, you have to have patience, you have to have acceptance. But if things are annoying you so much, where you feel like there's something that you really want them to stop doing, if it's something that there's really not anything that they could really do, or they don't really want to stop doing something, but you have to sort of have some kind of compromise. So, as an example, with the smoking thing, you just simply don't smoke around that person. If you live together, don't smoke in the place that you live. If they're in the car with you, don't smoke in the car, unless they're willing to say, okay, you could smoke in the car, even if in the car, just roll the windows down and have the air conditioner or the the air conditioner blasting out the window, so it helps to get rid of the smoke even more, and have your have your arm or your hand out the window, and all that kind of stuff. That's just one example. So there has to be compromise there, and also, kind of combine the other things that I talked about in the other videos, in terms of having compassion, having the sense of having the idea, the practice of non-self, having loving speech towards the other person, having compromise, being very open-minded, and obviously, spending time with that person, and also, you yourself might not really put a whole lot of stock into like holidays or birthdays or something like that, but the other person, that might be very important to them. So just kind of recognize those things, and don't leave that stuff out. As Buddhists, it's not really something that we should be, in terms of birthdays. For myself anyway, it's not something that I really feel is very important. In one aspect, it's kind of like it's something to celebrate only because it's like, as a human being, in Buddhism, as a human being, we are the only beings that can reach enlightenment, and so being a human is extremely rare, and a very awesome thing that we happen to be born as human. But at the same time, we have to kind of be careful because of the idea of non-self. We don't want to have too much of an ego and say that this celebrate my life and all that stuff. But that there's nothing wrong with it. This is something that I've kind of developed in my own over the years. That's why I didn't really get too offended. As an example, when a certain person in my family didn't wish me a happy birthday until the next day, I didn't really get offended about that at all. It didn't bother me. It's kind of like, okay, no big deal. That's kind of the mentality that I sort of have now. But other people, that might be very important to them, and at least just recognize that. In terms of other religions, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to compromise. Either if it's so important to both people, if you're from another religion and you're a Buddhist and you're dating someone from another religion, I think that there should be a discussion about that, and say, what about the option of just simply either not talking about it, or if it's very important, if you feel uncomfortable coming to a meditation retreat with me and I feel uncomfortable going to church with you, why don't we at least talk about the things that we do have in common, in the privacy of our own home or whatever. But if you're really, really open-minded and that doesn't bother you too much, and you're willing to go to church with that other person, and they're willing to go to a meditation retreat with you or something to that effect, and that's even better, because there's always something that you can learn. There's something new that you can learn, and like I said before, I personally believe that you can find truth in all religions. But anyway, most of the stuff that I've been talking about is very straightforward, and most people know all these things, but they don't put it into practice. If you don't, also if you don't work on yourself, that's the other thing that I wanted to mention within the next minute or two. If you don't work on yourself, if you don't love yourself and don't have compassion for yourself, that's sort of where it has to all start. As a Buddhist, you meditate to have loving compassion first of all for yourself, because you can't really practice what you preach. I'm sorry, you can't really preach what you practice. You can't say stuff and really mean it, and it's not something that's really solid. It's not something that's really grounded in anything if you don't really practice these things anyway. If you don't really practice what you preach, so you have to start within. And that's one of the reasons why Buddhism it has a lot to do with the mind and meditation and focusing inward, and we don't really pay too much attention to something other external force that's out there, because we have to be ourselves, and you have to work on yourself. So you have to love yourself first. You have to be the type of person that you want to be, and and love yourself before you could really love anybody else, and I think that's really important. So that's my video. I'm hoping that this is going to end the series because I don't really have anything else to talk about it. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Namaste. May all beings be well and happy. Peace.